Not all bread is created equal. And if you like yours soft, fluffy, moist, and delicious, then Hero Bread and Buns should be your first choice. But Hero Bread isn't just about taste and texture. It's high in fiber with ultra-low net carbs with 0 grams of sugar. Order today at hero.co and use the code AH10 to get 10% off your first purchase. That's AH10 at hero.co, HERO.co for 10% off your first purchase.
This is
Make It Plain.
Make It Plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make It Plain.
Get woke.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we round out our coverage of Black History Month, focusing on HBCUs, how could we talk about HBCUs and not talk about our Divine Nine? But particularly, we want to talk about our historic sororities, because we have an historic sorority member now occupying the White House, something that has not happened before. And so we are honored today to have with us the national president and CEO of one of these great sororities, one in which my own grandmother was a member. That would be Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. We have the national president and CEO with us, Beverly Evans Smith. Sister Smith, God bless you, President Smith. So good to see you. Thank you for joining us on Make It Plain.
And thank you, Reverend Mark, for having me today. I appreciate it.
It is an honor. How are things going?
In Delta, in the world, and, that's all about the same. I think we're all in a pandemic state, but I think even through the pandemic, just like Black folks always do, we survive, and sometimes in the midst of crisis, we thrive. And I think that's kind of where we are right now.
How has Delta been coping with the pandemic in terms of gathering and being active and helping the community?
None of that has stopped us. And I think, as I mentioned, and we'll talk about, we have a history of not being stopped. We've had to transition to virtual, but we have found ways around the issues that we have. In terms of our own meetings, we had regional conferences last summer, and we had 23,000 at 7 regional conferences, all on Zoom. We're about zoomed out, but we were able to take care of our business. We had our National Founders Day virtually. We honored our Sora Andra Day with her new movie that's coming out, United States versus Billie Holiday, with a conversation with her virtually just this past weekend. In regard to community service, we cannot afford, none of us can afford to let community service or social action stop by. During this, we may have had to have drive-through protests. We may have had to deliver food in a drive-through manner, but we did it all. We did not let that get in the way. Our fundraising and the amounts of money that we've been able to donate to the communities, because a lot of it has had to be done that way, has actually increased significantly. I'm incredibly pleased that our sorors have stepped up to the plate. We have had meetings and have talked about the fact that we need to make sure that we are still reaching out. Our programs, even the programs we have for our youth, we've tried to do virtually. A great concern we've got for what's happening with the internet and the fact that we don't have in many of our communities the kind of support we need to have with bandwidth has really forced us to the cars and to the streets to try and find other ways to do that while still managing in a COVID environment. I'm very proud of the fact that we have not skipped a beat when it comes to those things that are critical. Social action, as you know, right now is extremely critical. And we, needless to say, together with all the Divine Nine coming together, made sure that our voices were heard loud and clear, not only in terms of media, but also at the polls.
Indeed. And I know you're in Atlanta. I think finally people are realizing the sheer power of Black women when it comes to, electoral matters. It's been spoken about openly. You all really have made the difference in November, but also in the runoff in Georgia, right?
Oh, absolutely. As soon as we realized before we realized the situation we were in, having a feeling that it may come out that way, we pulled everybody together. The Divine Nine totally came together. We came together. Our own Congresswoman and my own sorority sister and neighbor, Lucy McBath, we wanted to make sure that she had the support that she needed. We have to do it in on a nonpartisan way, but that doesn't mean we can't find ways to be effective in terms of what we did. The work that has been done to pull it together, I honestly do believe that Black women were a force behind the force in this election.
I have no question about that myself. There are these organizations like Emily's List and whatnot that recruit women to run for office.
Right.
But what better place to recruit women to run for office than one of our sororities, like Delta Sigma Theta?
That's absolutely right. We actually started a new organization in Delta for Women in Action. That's a 501c3. Delta, as most people know, sororities, fraternities are 501c7s, and so we can't promote organizations. But we did, through our board in July this past summer, form a new organization that actually was one that's committed to social action, that actually can speak out and get people to run. In that new organization that we've created something called the Chisholm Jordan Institute, which is intended specifically to train Black women to run for office. We were doing it before, but decided to formalize that and to form an organization that could do that could speak out for and against candidates, that could speak out for and against issues. We were the first Greek letter organization to start a C3. We're very proud of that, but it really fits the legacy that we have, and we have actively been able to endorse candidates and push candidates through that vehicle.
Amen. Have you all been vocal in terms of both COVID relief for communities as well as COVID vaccines? Is still, as Dr. Hildreth says at Meharry, there's still a rational apprehension when it comes to a lot of our people getting the vaccine. How have you all addressed those issues?
That's a good way to put it, a rational apprehension. We actually have a COVID education program going. We did a webinar. We had Alexis Herman, who's past Secretary of Labor, on it. We had my two social action chairs, myself. We had Marcia Fudge, who's in Congress. We did a COVID series in the fall. I had my second shot last week without any reservations, but we're trying to do as much as we can to provide an education on what it's about, and then trying to, by example, let people know that it's okay. If I could try it, let me see if I can't get you to try it as well.
No, this is a good point. And I'm sure, too, you mentioned some of the legislation. Any specific legislation you're advocating? I'm sure the Deltas know the importance of what it would mean for our families and communities to get COVID relief money in some of our businesses. I mean, that's a part of this, too.
It absolutely is. The economic impact of COVID, it hits us severely. The legislation that's out there, and our congressional peoples keep us apprised on that. The current bill that's out there, obviously, we're pushing and supporting that. You know, when you talk trillions of dollars of need, I wish you could say it was just totally related to the pandemic, but we're trying to resolve issues that more people know about, that there's greater awareness of, that were there before the pandemic, but obviously what's happening now has brought it to light. The kind of support that's needed for equity in our communities has been there all along. You hate to think that a pandemic had to bring it to fruition so people are looking at it, and that there's some guilt out there that's trying to help, but I'll take any kind of help I can get in terms of where we're going. So we are pushing in support of that, try to keep up with our congressional leaders on that. One of the things we're also focused on, working with Sherilyn Ifill, who's another Delta, is making sure that the judges, the people that we are looking at locally in communities, and those that are running for appointed to positions of authority in the judicial system, are the right people. We don't necessarily educate ourselves well enough to know, you see it and you look at, okay, this one, I'll vote for this. You need to understand what they stand for. So we're really working on an education campaign, because that will make a difference too, in making sure some of these laws and changes hold up.
I would hope that what was done in Georgia, because people never voted in special elections like that before. And you're right. We got to get out of this mentality of thinking the only office to vote for is the presidency.
Yes.
And it's there's so many ways. And when you talk about even recruiting candidates, I hear from people, I'm going to run for Senate. I said, well, hold on. You haven't done anything else yet. Right? There's other offices, you can run for 8 rep, everybody's ready to go to the top. But no, these other positions, as you well know, are sometimes equally important, because they provide direct service to local communities. And to the extent we can get more Black women in those positions, that's critical too.
Absolutely. I tell you, I just looked at, we're doing, one of our members is doing witness statement right now. I approved this morning. We have a method of making sure our witness statements are clear in terms of what we're addressing. Georgia right now is trying to put some new absentee ballot laws in place that are absolutely, I just can't imagine right after we finish this and all the things that went haywire, you'd have legislation to try and change absentee ballot and say, well, maybe we shouldn't do it or we need to delay to shorten the time. I am just going, really? So we are in the midst of, within a month of trying to fight and show how wrong that is, having to fight it all over again. And that's local. So we can't afford to take our eye off that prize and to make sure those things happen.
Yeah, no, I agree. You're absolutely right. That fight is still ongoing. What tell us about you? Where did you go to school, and when did you become a Delta?
Well, I did not go to an HBCU. You have to hang your head. But my children and my husband all went to HBCU. But you know what? I think I learned more about civil rights and social action when I was at my university. I went to Bowling Green State University in Ohio.
Okay.
There were out of 10 or so thousand students. I think there was like 193 of us. That did not stop me from becoming the vice president of the student government and doing several other things at the university, even though I met a decent amount of opposition to that back in the day. But I've been always wanting to speak up. My dad was a civil rights advocate. We integrated our church, our neighborhood, the school, swimming pools. I swear I can't swim today because I went so many times with the Urban League places where he said, okay, there's nobody black been here before. All I need you to do, that's all the way my dad would always start, is just stick your foot in the pool. Just pretending you're swimming and that'll be all right. So,
that's what you did.
Yeah. So that voice is something that you need to have. But I've been a Delta for 53 years. So,
wow.
Yeah, 54 years for me. And, I joined Delta back on my campus. And I will give Bowling Green credit for this. We had a sorority house. Just like everybody else did, all the white sororities that were there. We were the only black sorority there. But the university felt if everybody else has a house, then we need to provide one for the members of Delta Sigma Theta. So we did have one. We were very active on campus in terms of what we did. But Delta really was, and I realized then, focused on social action. That was, for me, the first time I'd ever gone to school with anybody black that looked like me. There was one other girl in my school out of the private girls' school I went to, which my dad insisted we needed to continue to make sure stayed integrated, as he would do. But it was the first time I had black women my age that I had a chance to associate with. But growing up, obviously, I became very comfortable with who I am and being in awkward situations, which no longer were awkward to me. The awkward situation was being with that many black women at one time. But the chance to do that and to understand more from a different perspective who I was and what we stood for was phenomenal. I have to credit Delta Sigma Theta with giving me that opportunity. I never intended to be president of Delta Sigma Theta. Don't know how that ever got into my head to continue to move that far. I have always been a tad outspoken, you might be able to tell that, and that might have been what did it. But the experience I had at Bowling Green back in the 60s, during the time of the Kent State shooting and the other things that happened, really sparked with and continues to make sure that that's the focus in life I have. Our children went to HBCUs intentionally. They went to, in the Georgia area, in Atlanta, the school that probably wouldn't have been their choice, just like most places. We wanted them to go someplace to get their best education, which unfortunately did mean a lot of us were there. But we also wanted them to be very grounded in who they were, and they always were from little children. And my husband went to Central State, they went to FAMU. So we are definitely an HBCU family. I would have not changed that opportunity for them and what they got out of that experience for the world.
I'm sure you wouldn't. So, but you alluded to your father and the integration
right.
Fight you in. So what city was that? Where did you grow up?
Massillon, Ohio.
Is that right? Wow.
And I have to tell you and I still have the original deed. The deed to our property says on there that you cannot be purchased by a Negro. He could not get a loan in the state of Ohio to buy that land. He could not get a builder in the city of Massillon to build it. He had to get a contractor from another city who was finally willing to build the house, who had death threats the entire time he was working on that home. I remember the first night we moved in, I was in the third grade. My sisters are 5 and 9 years younger, so they were babies. One sister was just born. My dad stood in front of that house all night, the first night we were there, holding a Winchester rifle, which I still have, while people rode up and down that street, the Hood family, I'll never forget their name, calling us names, calling him names. We could hear them outside, threatening him. He stood with that gun all night to make sure we survived that night in that new home that we had. And, you know, for someone in the third grade who was getting ready to walk into a school that really had no one who looked like myself, it was, you know, that's where the strength comes from. Your strength or your fear comes from your experiences. I think we all have to focus on whatever strength we have from whatever bad experience we're going to have, because that strength and resilience is what's going to keep you. But I have never forgotten that. He always felt that if people lived together and got to know that the differences were superficial and that we were more alike than we were different, that we would be okay. But we all had to live through his vision. But we survived. But we did survive. When he died in 2000, 2000, mind you, he actually integrated the cemetery that he's in today.
You are kidding.
And he and my mom are the only two people in that cemetery.
Isn't that something? Isn't that something?
He bought that cemetery plot years before, because he intended until he died, he was going to continue to make sure that we had equal access, even in the burial ground. So we did.
Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Amen. Well, God bless your father, and God bless him for teaching you how to be a freedom fighter.
There you go.
From a young age, from when you were a little thing. That's amazing. Lastly, you mentioned Shirley Chisholm.
Yes.
A very famous Delta, and I was very close to Dr. Dorothy Height.
Oh, my mentor.
Yeah. One of mine as well. God rest her soul. From your point of view, how Delta's history was made for this moment. We know the vice president is an AKA, but her inspiration was a Delta, Shirley Chisholm, as was the inspiration for practically every black woman. That she was inspiration for practically every black woman. Talk to us about Delta's history and how Delta was made for this moment, and the work that Delta has done in its history is now manifested in black women being able to hold high office.
Which is so exciting. And that, you know, that's something I actually enjoy talking about. I always say that social action is in Delta's DNA. Our first public act as an organization was in 1913 when we marched with the suffragettes. We were the only Black Greek-led organization that marched with the suffragettes together in the movement. Mary Church Terrell, who was a very famous suffragist, is an honorary member of Delta Sigma Theta, and she encouraged those young ladies, think about this, in 1913 to leave that campus and go march with these white women. And the school had a fit. When I read the history, they had a difficult time finding some chaperone to go with them, but some poor man did, and went with them. But you go from Mary Church Terrell to Mary McLeod Bethune, who was an advisor to Roosevelt on minority affairs and actually sat at the table, only black woman at the table when the United Nations was formed in San Francisco. Patricia Roberts Harris was the first African-American woman to hold a cabinet seat. She held 2 cabinet seats with Jimmy Carter, the same seat that Marcia Fudge is looking to sit in now. She will be the second black woman to be the Secretary of HUD. The first one was a Delta. We're looking for Marcia to do the same. Dorothy Height, who you mentioned, NCNW and a proud advisor, presidential congressional gold medal winner, was a freedom fighter and one who was always at the table. Daisy Bates, Little Rock Nine, Fannie Lou Hamer, was sick and tired of being sick and tired. Amelia Boynton in Selma, who asked Martin Luther King to come and do that march in Selma and was right up front marching with him. Frankie Muse Freeman, the first woman on the Civil Rights Commission, was a Delta. Shirley Chisholm, we know. Barbara Jordan, famous, truly, just such I'd love to hear her speak even today when you see her. Congresswoman Stephanie Tubb Jones, we've got the 7 in Congress now. Carol Moseley Braun, the first African-American female senator who is there. Brigadier General we have. You know, we've got journalists, Soledad O'Brien. I mentioned Sherilyn Ifill, who is leading a phenomenal civil rights organization. April Ryan, who said she wasn't going to go to the White House anymore as long as somebody was there. But anyway, Susan Taylor, who was with Essence Magazine, Sabrina Fulton, Lucy McBath, both mothers of the movement, Loretta Lynch, the Black female attorney general. We have had there are three African American surgeon generals. All three were Deltas. Jocelyn Elders, Audrey Forms Manley, most recently Regina Benjamin. We have Keisha Lance Ballin, who's the mayor of Atlanta. And I think we're most proud, I've named just a few, but I'm most proud of the fact that we've had 12 Deltas on U.S. postal stamps. And to imagine...
Is that the most of any sorority?
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Yes, by far. We've had Mary McLeod Bethune, Patricia Roberts Harris, Ethel Payne, Wilbur Rudolph, Mary Church Terrell, Daisy Bates, Fannie Lou Hamer, Barbara Jordan, Shirley Chisholm, Dorothy Height, Lena Horne, Gwen Eiffel, all have been on U.S. postal stamps. And I think because of that, we've got a responsibility as an organization to make sure we focus on social action. It truly is in the DNA we have, and it's our history tells us that this is what we must do. I will not be the president to let those founders down. None of us will. So I think all of us feel in our positions that we've got to make sure we continue to move forward with what Deltas are known to do and are meant to do.
And clearly you are doing that. Congratulations. What a glorious history, folks. And what better way to recognize Black History Month than with one of our divine sororities, Delta Sigma Theta. We're thankful to the president, the national president and CEO, Beverly Evans Smith. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate you.
All right, wonderful. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue our focus this week on HBCUs and their historical sororities and how this impacts the history of HBCUs in general, we must include another. That would be Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Their president joins us, Valerie Hollingsworth Baker. Madam President, how are you? Welcome to Make It Plain.
Well, good morning. Good morning. And how are you doing? I'm doing well.
Well, I'm great. I'm great. And folks, we're in New York. Madam President and I are in New York together, so we're New Yorkers. How have you well, first of all, how have you and your family been faring in this pandemic? We're here in the epicenter.
Well, I would say it's been rough. My husband is an essential worker, so he's been going out there every day, and it's been kind of tough for me because it's not easy knowing that your loved ones are out there. I know they're there, they're necessary, they have to do the right thing, they're taking care of the communities that, we live in, but it's still difficult because, up until now that the vaccines are out, that's a whole difference. But before, in the last year, it has been tough for me because I myself am at home. I stay at home. I work from home. So I don't have to go out unless it's absolutely necessary. But having someone that has to go out every day, it plays with your mind. So it's been a little rough, but perseverance, believing in the Almighty and just knowing that you keep the faith. So that's what I've had to do to get through these months and the year.
I hear you. We're praying for you and your family, and God bless your husband for the essential work he's doing. Obviously, that's risky business, so I know how you must feel. In that vein, where are you and your family on the vaccine? And then let's talk about what the sorority is doing. All of our organizations, all of our Black organizations, including our Greek letter organizations, have been having initiatives encouraging Black folk to take the vaccine. We know that that sometimes there can be some apprehension because of our history. Where are you in your household on that? And then also, where is Zeta Phi Beta on that? Are you all involved in initiatives to encourage people to take the vaccine?
Well, I would say, starting off, Reverend Mark, with just the household, my household. I'm proud to say here live that I am due to take my first vaccine on Monday at 9 a.m. because they've opened up some additional centers in different locations. So I will be taking mine, and of course my my husband being an essential worker, he's going to be taking his this week, the next week coming up as well. So at least we're together on that piece. So I feel a little better. I feel a little less nervous, and then when I finally get my second dose, I'll at least feel that now I can settle my affairs for the household and move on from there. That's my personal goal. As far as Zeta Phi Beta sorority is concerned, we are in a myriad of initiatives trying to get the information out to our membership and to the communities in which we live and serve in. We're not here to promote and say, you must go and take the vaccine or take Moderna or take the one from Pfizer or take the one coming up from Johnson & Johnson. We're here to say you need to arm yourself with the information that is needed so you can make a correct decision for yourself and your family, what you want to do. Because as you know, as we are Black people, we're not trusting on what is going on with these vaccines. But I try to educate myself. I've done a lot of research and watching the news and reading what's going on with CDC every day. And I tell my membership that's what they have to do. They have to make a conscious decision for themselves. I've made a conscious decision for myself and my family. I will let them know that. I will be updating them as after I take it, what has been going on with me, if there's any symptoms, if there's not, just to allay some people's fears. But I believe that our job is to educate our membership and the community in which we serve on these vaccines. What are the alternatives by having the vaccine versus not. So I think that's very important for us to do. And that's what we've been doing.
I was thinking about, the intake and new people coming on board. Mm-hmm. There obviously is nothing like the pledging experience, especially at a Black college campus. Mm-hmm. So this group, this generation, and this COVID experience is going to be, unfortunately miss out on that. And while that might seem regrettable, and there's no substitute for the in-person experience, pledging ain't supposed to be easy anyway. It almost makes me wonder whether or not that might even create a deeper and more long-standing bond. Hey, we made it over in the middle of COVID. I just thought about that.
Well, it's different. It's different, but this is what I say. I always try to find a silver lining in everything. The cup being half full versus half empty. What I've learned with COVID is that we can do so much more, because believe it or not, I'm working harder now than I was working when it was pre-COVID, because everybody thinks just because you're at home, you could be on Zoom all the time. They'll call you 2 minutes before and say, can you be on this? Can you jump on here? Can you do all that? And, we're working to make sure to keep connected, because that is the issue. But what I wanted to say to this is that for our new members are doing this intake, having the ceremonies, the joy about that is that how many of them could say that their international president or international first vice president will attend their ceremonies, will bring greetings to them, will talk to them, that they'll be at their virtual receptions. I can't tell you the number of virtual receptions and the actual ceremonies. I know we alone, the first vice president and myself, we have been physically there on Zoom with these ceremonies and have inducted in 10 weeks, over 500 new members. So they get that experience in seeing us and being able to speak to us, where that's not something that everybody would have that opportunity had we been live. So a lot of this now is that even though we're not touching each other and being in the presence, physically in the presence, just like I'm talking to you, we're here. I see you, you see me. We can have that conversation. We can have one-on-one conversations. We can have group conversation. And that's not how it might have been prior to COVID, because you wouldn't have that intimate discussion time with your senior leaders.
No, that's definitely a silver lining for sure. That certainly is. And I presume too, all of the social justice activism that Zeta Phi Beta is known for, you all were able to stay on top of that too, especially last summer during that time and space of reckoning that hopefully has not ended in America. But you all have been on top of that as well.
Oh, yes. Now, when it came time for our social justice activities and what we wanted to do, I'm happy to say that with the Divine Nine and being a member of the Council of Presidents, we are unified in the things that we want to do together. As I said, all of us, we do similar things. And some of us are known for certain things versus others. But when it came to making sure that we were out there educating the communities around the country and even and globally about voting, about the census. These are things that we all pushed, that we all came together on, and we all got our members revved up, ready to go, and getting out into their communities and educating, mobilizing, educating, to make sure that everyone knew what they had to do and that they had the power to do that through their vote and taking the census. So those are two things that we all decided that was going to be our group activities that we were going to do, whether it was webinars, whether we actually got out there masked up when it was time to go out there to make sure that we got people to the polls, all of that. We did that, and we were as one. We were unified in that. And that, I believe, shone very well through the outcome of the election, because I know the Divine Nine worked tirelessly to make that happen.
And of course, people are finally acknowledging the significant role of Black women in the electorate, as represented by what you just described. And the unity is great too. So just to be clear, the first Black woman vice president, the first woman vice president, first Asian vice president, the first Caribbean vice president, is a member. She's an AKA, but I'm sure, you're a different sorority, but because she's a member of the Divine Nine, do you all claim her as well as your own?
We claim her as a woman of color, a woman that has stood the test of time, and that we are proud of her. We are proud that she has achieved this, because when she won, Black women won. And that's what's important. We wear different colors. We kid sometimes, and we have that way we do what we do. But at the end, we're still one. We're people of color helping our own, making sure that we give them what they need. What kind of educational initiatives? What kind of community service initiative? We're doing that because we are trying to do what we need to do to uplift our people. So having her as the vice president is one of the proudest days that we can stick our chest out for and say, we are proud that one of us has reached that position. And I, for one, I'm very happy that she is the vice president of the United States. And I know that she's going to do great things.
Having her as vice president, with her HBCU experience, with her Divine Nine experience, how does that impact what you will want to do in terms of policy and initiative, everything relative to the sorority? Does that help? Does it change the relationship between the sorority and the federal government? Are there issues you might raise or things you might ask for support for or to be in collaboration with that heretofore you may not have? Is this open a new frontier in terms of the relationship between the sorority and the government and policy?
Well, I believe that it will. I know that President Biden has said that he's even having area for to talk about the Divine Nine, have people that are representative of them. In our sororities and fraternities, we do have political figures that are up on Capitol Hill already and just come on to Capitol Hill. So I believe that it's going to be those that we have to now hold their feet to the fire and say, these are the things that affect our communities in which we live. And we've elected you. And now you need to do your job and really look out for the people that have put you in office, because we've worked hard. And I'm not just saying just a small populace. I'm saying the broader picture of all that came together, all people of color that came together and said, we're tired of the way things are and we want things to be done better. And I do believe that we have a listening ear. And I think that's important, because sometimes when you don't have a listening ear, well, you're not going to get anywhere anyway. But I believe that they're open. And when you're open to hear what is going on and then try to address it, I think that is half the job done right there.
Madam President, talk a little bit to our audience, if you would, about the history of Zeta Phi Beta and how it was even made for this moment, how there was a trajectory from you all's inception that could bring about greater recognition for the Divine Nine, could bring about the first Black woman vice president, and could bring about readiness to deal with the reckoning and racial justice in America.
Well, if we go back, and we would be going back before 1920 when it all started, when we were founded, January 16th, 1920, it had to go back before with our Sigma brothers who had a vision. The founders, they had a vision of having a sister organization that would work with them to help promote the ideals, their ideals, and then, of course, the ideals that we also created as Zetas. So once we were founded, you remember back then in history, that is, the pandemic was just kind of like petering out, because it started in 1918. There was a pandemic then, and when we were founded, we were now just on the downslide of that pandemic, and women's suffrage and then, you go on to the stock market crash. I mean, we had 5 young women, okay, who was on Howard University campus, and they had a vision that now is 101 years old. But they started with wanting to be that community conscious, action oriented organization. They wanted to help their people. And they had to persevere through some of the hardest times when it started. So through the years, we garnered a lot of firsts. We were the first that chartered a chapter in Africa. We were the first to have youth auxiliaries. We were the first to have women that didn't graduate from college, but we call them our friends or amici, the Greek term, and they work with us. We're the first to have constitutionally bound, the only group that is constitutionally bound to our brother organization. We forged that trail. We were the first to cross over to the Mason-Dixon line and start going into the Deep South to charter chapters. I mean, we were there on the forefront of many things that happened in history. And it wasn't always the upside, always the good times. We were there when it was hard. When Black people, we're talking, there was still that mindset of slavery. There was still those things that were going on where you couldn't even go to certain bathrooms and things of that nature. But we went down south. We still persevered to make sure that we brought the sorority mentality to others, so that they would understand how important it is to be a bond, how we have to do things together, because we have to move together. We can't move apart. We can do so much better when we're united. And that was our mindset. So over the years, that's what we have done. We have continued to do what our founders have wanted us to do. And I believe that they know where they are, that we have been forging ahead, making change for those who need our help, to bring light into the darkness, to make sure that our people are taken care of. We're addressing their needs. And what we do best in Zeta, we do service. We're the best that there is when it comes to service. And when you think about Zeta and you think about everything that we do, we shine because of the service, because we're doing God's work. That's what's really important, and that's what we continue to do.
Amen. Very, very well put. Well, speaking of light into darkness, as we get ready to go, I was never more proud than during that Macy's Thanksgiving parade. The way the community, I tweeted, I say, everybody, look at what's happening on Twitter. Black Twitter is lighting Macy's up. I mean, it went viral. And even though they didn't know what they were doing, they just tweeted something. They didn't know what they were talking about. And for those of you who don't know, Macy's tweeted that this was just a kind of a random step group that had performed. And Black Twitter went after him, said, that's a historically Black sorority part of the divide. So Macy's took the tweet down, corrected the tweet, and acknowledged the sorority. And so even in that mishap, it gave an opportunity for the larger community to recognize and say, wait a minute, yeah, we need to acknowledge those who have done all the things they've done and have this history. And I even tweeted, some of the other Divine Nine presidents. I said, y'all see this? And I started texting them. I said, y'all circulate this too. So then everybody started saying, yeah, this is Zeta Phi Beta. You got to put some respect on the name. Call the whole name. So I just want to let you know, I think that was a very, very proud moment.
Well, I thank you so much, because that was one of my strategic plans when I first became president in July of 2018. I wanted to bring Zeta to the forefront, put that image out there of who we are. And one of the things is that, for Macy's, that's the largest in the world as far as a parade. And there was no other Divine Nine that had gotten to the Macy's Day Parade. So when I had an opportunity to jump on that, because once again, being in the centennial year, I wanted that to happen. So when they made that mishap, I knew that it was going to, I immediately said something. I knew they were fixing it. But when I saw the storm of everyone else joining in, I said, see, that goes to show you how when we as unified, what we can do. Macy's apologized. They know what their error was. They and they corrected it. And that's what's important, because you can't allow anything to just slide by. You want to make sure that if there's something wrong, correct it, get it right. We know who we are, and we want everybody else to know who we are as an organization. And that's what happened.
Well, those that didn't know, show found out that day. That was one of the happiest Thanksgivings I've ever had. I'm telling you, that was my Thanksgiving. It was beautiful, and you all deserved it. Congratulations on all the great work you're doing. Congratulations on the centennial. It's almost happy 101st now. And I know I like what you said. I know y'all gonna keep this train going. So God bless you. And thank you for joining us, okay?
Thank you so very much, and you have a good day.
Folks, joining us now as we continue to recognize Black History Month, and we're recognizing HBCUs in particular. Now, my guest now actually wears two hats. Not only is she the president of an HBCU, but today we're focusing on our historic sororities, and she is the president of one of those as well. And so that's the hat she's wearing today. We're happy to have with us the president of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Dr. Glenda Glover joins us from Nashville. Dr. Glover, how are you today?
Good morning. It's a good day. Thank you for inviting me.
It's a pleasure to have you. So how has the sorority been coping and handling things in the midst of this pandemic, first of all?
Well, of course, it affects all of us differently. It affected the HBCU community. It affected the Divine Nine community. we pivoted to virtual operations, virtual programming, virtual meetings. We slipped into the virtual world, but we still managed to serve our communities. We still managed to do the service projects to raise money for students who are going to college. We still continue the basics of the programmatic aspects of the sorority.
And people have you all still been able to have lines and pledgees too?
Well, we had to restrict that a lot because of the safety issues.
Mm-hmm.
We did find a way for those students who had started last year, this time last year when the initiation process began, and we had to shut that down. Those who were in the process, we let them finish. But the others, we've not done any more processes since then.
Okay. And obviously we know the AKAs, you all have a strong commitment to social activism, social justice, community help. How about in that area? Have you all been able to, as best you can in the virtual space, continue that work?
Well, of course, last year we had a massive GOTV effort to get out the vote. Right. Throughout the campaign. We couldn't tell anyone for whom to vote because, we're a nonprofit. But we certainly organized that effort to get out the vote effort. We had the undergraduates and each college campuses, the Divine Nine, just stepped up to the plate and just did a lot to ensure that the vote they got out to vote for both elections, both in November, then again on January 5th. Because the right to vote is so sacred. A pandemic cannot stop that, cannot have us forfeit that right because of a pandemic. So we worked around it and got the vote out.
Isn't it a blessing, really, that finally people are beginning to realize, in particular, the significance of the Black women electorate? And Black women have always made a difference, but it seems even more so now. People are finally getting it, how foundational Black women are to the electoral process and the difference Black women make.
Oh, yes. I mean, it's no secret. There's no question. It's been said throughout the last 6, 7 months, years, that the Black women are the foundation. Black women have just laid that foundation for that right to vote. Back to the suffrage movement. Back in 1913, when women were fighting for women to have the right to vote, when it was decades later before Black women got the right to vote. But Alpha Kappa Alpha was very, very much into that. And as a matter of fact, sent a letter to the head of the march saying, we're not going to march at the back of the march, participate in the march and go to the back of a march for the right to vote. So if you don't let us do that, we're not going to participate. Can you imagine back in 1913, sending a letter like that to somebody in charge and say, listen, we can't march in the center or up front. You're not going to relegate us to the back of the line. So we've always been involved. You just think about, this is the time Alpha Kappa Alpha was founded. In the early 1900s, 1908, 12 years earlier, they had just declared Plessy versus Ferguson that separate but equal is the law of the land. It was against that backdrop when African Americans were being discriminated against, dehumanized. NACP was founded a year later. There was just so much segregation. So it took courage. It took a level of boldness to even form the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. And 3 other sororities were formed with similar missions to uplift Black folks, just uplift African American women, and we're still continuing to do that to this day.
What has been Alpha Kappa Alpha's role in this situation with the vaccine? We know, as Dr. Hildreth at Meharry, the term I like to use the term he uses a rational apprehension in our community, obviously.
Yes.
But what have you all been doing to inform people about the vaccine and even to encourage them to take it?
Well, it's an educational process, and there's some apprehension, and rightly so. We look at the Tuskegee Airmen, you look at how the past has not been kind to African Americans when it comes to medical trials and vaccines and medicine. So we have to educate our own community to say, listen, what has a greater risk? Not getting the vaccine or maybe getting COVID-19. I know personally because my daughter, her husband, my grandson, the baby, all had COVID. So all have COVID. So we're getting through it. God has blessed us. and we claim in faith, we claim healing. But even so, we know that there's some apprehension to it. And we're telling them, listen, I went and got my second shot last Saturday. And it just, everything is fine. I went to Meharry and got it. Went where I feel comfortable getting it. Went to Meharry, got my second shot, my husband and I. So we're okay. He said we have to make sure that our community goes out and get vaccinated. Because having a vaccine is not the same as getting vaccinated. We're just trying to get people out to get vaccinated so we can lower that risk of getting COVID or dying of COVID.
You're uniquely positioned in the HBCU space as a president. Talk to us a little bit historically about the relationship between our historical sororities and our HBCUs and how they complement each other. For example, how the AKAs have been an asset to our HBCU campuses, and in turn, how the HBCU experiences has kept the AKAs going strong.
Well, I serve as president of Tennessee State University. And as president, I have to make sure that nothing is compromised in the students' education experience during this COVID-19 pandemic. That's paramount. We've had some challenges with technology devices and getting students home and back, so we've had some challenges, but nothing can compromise their education because, too much of a price has been paid for that. So the AKs have worked hard with HBCUs. Let me give you a prime example. When I became president, I know, being a college president also, I understand the plight of African American students and the plight of HBCUs. So I know funding is a big issue for HBCUs. So I had one of the program targets for the sorority is to support HBCUs, to push HBCUs, to ask to have students to attend HBCUs, to market them, but then to take it to another level, find money, support them financially. So we have a project that once a year, one day a year, we raise $1 million in one day. We've done it 3 years in a row from the membership. We say, if you can have cell phones, you take that money and give it to HBCUs instead of going to Nordstrom's or even Targets or wherever you're going to go, give it to HBCUs. So in one day, we raised $1 million, and we've already distributed to all but I think 6 HBCUs, maybe 10, all but 6 or 10 HBCUs have gotten a $50,000 or $100,000 endowment to continue the sustainability of the university. Because endowments represent sustainability. You give scholarships to students. So every college campus, it was our intent, to have an AKA endowment, aka HBCU endowment on every college campus, so students can see the relationship between Greek-led organizations, the Divine Nine, Alpha Kappa Alpha, and HBCUs. Because they do go hand in hand. We both fight to prepare leaders, to cultivate young women to become leaders and succeed in life, to better our communities, to work against them, to look at the healthcare issues that we're having, international focus. So we have so many issues. We're social issues. Because, you and I talked earlier, we talked about this COVID-19. They keep saying it's because African Americans have high susceptibility because they have high blood pressure, diabetes, and that's the reason. No, that's not the reason. I mean, that happens, but the reason is there was so much discrimination in healthcare that the chickens just come home to roost now. So now that years later, when there was when we were not allowed to go to the hospital and get the proper treatment, now it's coming back. You can see now the results of that. That's why we're having a problem. That's why we have high blood pressure. That's why, no, our diets are not always proper, but we got to go to the root cause of this. The root cause was the discrimination, the unfair treatment in the healthcare world for African Americans. And so now it's coming back and we can see some of the issues associated with it.
And of course, you have and the AKAs have every right to be proud. For the first time, we have an African American woman in the vice presidency, and she is an AKA. Talk to us. Well, first of all, let me ask you this, because I talked to the president of Howard University, her alma mater, about this as well. What difference do you think it will make for our HBCUs and our Greek letter organizations to have one of our own, an HBCU graduate and a Divine Nine member, an AKA member in the White House? What difference do you think that'll make in what we're trying to do?
Let's go to the AKA first.
Okay.
It's the whole Divine Nine. You know, it would be easy to say Alpha Kappa Alpha and Kamala Harris, but she's aware of the fact that it took all 9 fraternity sororities working together with the assistant in getting her in office. It wasn't just Alpha Kappa Alpha. It elevates the Divine Nine to that level, and let people see it's not just Greek shows or it's having fun on campus. It's about impact and change, social change. You know, the massive GOTV movement. I mean, that was just phenomenal. And so in the HBCU, where it has elevated HBCUs, the fact that Kamala Harris attended Howard University, you know, one of the most prominent HBCUs in the world, it shows the caliber of people that HBCUs produce. So, you know, we're proud this is the year of the HBCU. I mean, she has elevated HBCU because it is a game changer for little black girls and little Indian girls, little Asian girls. And if you can see it, you can be it. And it's such an inspirational moment. And what I like best about it is that it can finally put to bed that question of, are HBCUs relevant? Well, we've shown the relevance. Anybody who asks that question now should be embarrassed. They should be ashamed to even think about, are HBCUs relevant? Because she has shown the relevancy of HBCUs. It's so relevant that we brought her up through the HBCU ranks, and now she's vice president. So in fact, we're so relevant. If HBCUs did not exist, they have to create us. You know, so it's a good day for HBCUs.
No question about it. And lastly, give our audience a little. You mentioned it too. Obviously, the role in the suffragette movement that the AKAs played. Tell our audience even more, if you don't mind, about the history of the sorority and how the sorority's history was a trajectory that led to this moment where a member would be in the White House.
Well, it's the vision of the founders of the organization. When they dreamed of this day, they dreamed of a better day. They looked over in the direction of the promised land. You know, back in 1908, they saw this day. They saw this very day. They looked across the rivers of discrimination. They looked across the rivers of segregation. They looked across those rivers and saw that now we can see that she has come so successfully across them. So somebody has crossed the river that they envisioned. Our founders saw this day coming. So it started back in 1908 and has come forward now to see where are we now. A black woman in the White House, a member of the Divine Nine, Alpha Kappa Alpha, in the White House, standing number 2, who has a power to be the decision maker in the Senate. First of all, if you don't believe in God now, if you didn't believe in God, you have to do it now. If there were some non-believers, they have to be converted now, they say. They have to know that there is a God. That's what that says to me. That's what our founders prayed for this day. And you can't hear it, God. You just have to wait. So now here it is, 2021, we're elected in 2020, and we're doing the work of this ministry because politics is a ministry. And so we're doing the works of this ministry. And that's why I'm so happy to talk about it, because it sets HBCUs aside. It sets Divine Nine aside. It lets people know that here we are, we're working hard to make change in America for black women, black men, black people.
And I'd be remiss, folks, as we said, Dr. Glover's president of Tennessee State University. My grandparents, my mother's parents were the first in their families to go to college. And they both graduated from Tennessee State back when it was called Tennessee A&I, back in the 30s, in the 1930s, believe it or not. Well, you and your family are in our prayers, and I hope you all are recovering well. And much love to Tennessee State, but especially much love to the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, of which Kamala Harris is a member. And let me just say, if you all heard the president, what she said, you know, she has we're talking about the AKs at this moment, but she's kept everything in the context of the Divine Nine because we're all in this together.
Right.
So we definitely appreciate that unity. Dr. Glenda Glover, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. Please remember to listen, like, subscribe, and wherever you get your podcasts, please give the show a 5-star rating. And please do spread the word. Let's all continue to pray for each other during this pandemic and this police-demic. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.
Not all bread is created equal. And if you like yours soft, fluffy, moist, and delicious, then Hero Bread and Buns should be your first choice. But Hero Bread isn't just about taste and texture. It's high in fiber with ultra-low net carbs with 0 grams of sugar. Order today at hero.co and use the code AH10 to get 10% off your first purchase. That's AH10 at hero.co, HERO.co for 10% off your first purchase.